A couple of weeks ago, me and my friend set out on a voyage we'd dreamed of for years. It was a hike on the Appalachian Trail. He's gone now, and I wish we'd never stepped foot onto that path. We live in Tennessee, and all our lives we glanced longingly at the various entries to the trail as we'd hiked simpler, more beginner-friendly trails. As we came to the end of our time in college, we made a promise to each other that before we got jobs we'd hike from Tennessee to Maine. John and I set out from the Smoky Mountains with resources set to last for 6 months. The trail was beautiful. We spent our first day just marveling at the scenery that surrounded us. "This shit is dense," John chuckled as he pointed to the canopy of leaves that nearly blotted out the morning sun. I chuckled too, but I found myself shrugging off a shiver. "Nothing we're not used to," I replied, looking at the uneven ground before me. We really had practiced up for this hike. We got accustomed to the subpar food, the long days of 15+ mile walks, and of course sleeping in tents. Even still, I felt my nerves creep up as we forged ahead. It was our 5th night on the trail that we saw them for the first time, eyes peering at us through the brush and trees. "Shit, dude, do you see that?" John's voice was a hiss in my ear. He didn't risk a pointed finger, choosing instead to nudge my elbow gently with his own. I was dead tired from our trek that day. We'd done a solid 18 miles. Not that it matters. See what? The fucking tree. My shitty remark was cut short as the air left my lungs. Off the trail, maybe a few hundred yards, I spotted the eyes for myself. Just one pair, peering at us through the undergrowth. A bear. Had to be. "Oh fuck man," John groaned, the fear so palpable I could imagine the beads of sweat that had surely broken out on his skin. I felt no better. Do we yell? I stared openly at the eyes, and they stared back at me. It's an awful feeling, being hunted, being prey. I had never felt anything like it before. It awakened something primal in me, but I felt no courage. No, we don't know if there's cubs or something around. Maybe it's just curious about us. I had no clue if that was even a factor. All I knew was that we had bear spray in the bags, and I did not want to have to test its effectiveness. I picked up the pace a bit and tugged on John's sleeve to encourage him to do the same. I tore my attention off the eyes, but the feeling in my gut told me that they did not reciprocate. John and I were all but jogging now. There was a bend in the path ahead, and I knew that if we could get around it, we'd break the line of sight. As we turned the corner, I allowed myself one stolen glance at the eyes. Putrid yellow stared back unapologetically. "Fuck." I spat the word out in the same instant that I lost sight of them. John painted out some expletive of his own, each of us punctuating the last 45 seconds, as if they'd lasted an hour. We trudged another mile and a half in near silence before we felt comfortable stopping for the night. We'd walked far too long already for the day, and we were both exhausted. "Hey Steven." John didn't even glance my way as he pitched his tent. "Yeah, what was that?" John's hands were shaking as he fumbled with the stakes of his tent. I told myself that it was just the exhaustion. I told myself that exhaustion was what made mine tremble, too. It was a bear, I stated plainly. What else? I wiped sweat from my brow, and in the brief darkness that swallowed my vision, yellow eyes pierced into me. You know how if you look towards the sun for too long, the white-hot intensity lingers when you close your eyes? I felt it then, but it was a cold, hateful yellow. I mean, yeah, I get that. Not exactly a ton of big wildlife out here, John replied. But like, you did feel it too, right? Feel what, dude? As soon as I'd spat the words, I felt like a dick. John turned to look at me, and I could see he was hurt. Did he look something else? Disappointed, I think. And me, and the obvious damper the eyes had put on our trip. Maybe it was both. Sorry. The word hung in the air with no response. I felt scared shitless, that's for sure. That's not what I meant, John muttered as he finalized his arrangements for the night. I wanted to ask for clarification, but it was clear that we were done discussing it for now. We settled into our tents, but I couldn't sleep for shit. I bet John couldn't either. As waves of exhaustion tugged at my eyelids, I jumped to a start in my tent, worried that the owner of those eyes was creeping up at that very moment. Thin, long fingers stretching out to grip the zipper of my tent. I wondered if it had seen a zipper before, if it knew how they worked. What the fuck is it? I asked of myself. I'm worked up over a bear in Tennessee, in the mountains. Christ, how long have I let myself spiral over the most expected possible thing? I glanced at my watch and saw that it was well past midnight. We'd been getting up at 6 to start our trek every morning, and I knew that was going to be painful the next day. In spite of my racing heart, I finally drifted into an anxious sleep. We made it 2 days before we saw them again. Honestly, John and I had all but shed off the terror of those few minutes. We'd picked back up on our excitement and admiration for the trail. We'd also passed a handful of fellow hikers in those 2 days, which was a godsend for settling nerves. We even stopped and shared a little meal with a lovely couple on our 7th night. They contributed some of their food and we gave some of ours. If nothing else, I think everyone was grateful for a little diversity of taste. Tyler and Sammy were their names. They were from Ohio, somewhere close to Cedar Point, and they'd also been planning their big hike of the trail for quite some time. If you're reading this and they sound familiar, I hope that this brings you any small measure of closure. We've been loving it, Tyler said with a chuckle. Loving is maybe a stretch, Sammy said with a little laugh of her own. I have calluses the size of golf balls on my feet. John and I laughed, enjoying the company of our newfound friends. Dusk dragged darkness over our little group, and everyone knew it was time to part ways. Tyler and Sammy had begun up in Maine and seemed eager to reach their destination in Georgia. You guys got this. The best part's ahead of you. Tyler turned back and waved as he said this, giving us a little flourish of outstretched arms. Congrats y'all, I shouted back, even if it was a little bit premature. They had already made it so far down the trail, I had zero doubt they'd complete their journey. The very next day, as afternoon turned to evening, John stopped dead in his tracks a few paces ahead of me. What's up, dude? Need a break? I breathed hard. If I'm being honest, I needed one. John jammed his index finger against his lips and pushed his other hand downward, trying with a ferocity to quiet me down. The foo. Shut up, shut up. The words choked their way through John's nearly clenched jaw. Listen, my heart beat harder and faster than it already had been, but I obeyed. In total silence, John and I listened to the sounds of the darkening woods around us. A gentle crack broke the eerie stillness we'd been experiencing. John pointed immediately in the direction of the sound and looked at me pleadingly. I heard it, I said, barely audible to myself. John must have understood, because he looked relieved immediately. A deer maybe, or another bear I guess. I held the sound of the S and let it slither through the air as a voice cut me short. Ahead of you. What did he? John waved his hand viciously through the air, signaling me to stop talking. I'd have been offended if I weren't so afraid. The voice cut through the air again, this time louder but no fuller. The best part's ahead of you. The phrase put a pain in my gut like food poisoning. I knew that phrase, and I knew who said it, but I did not know this voice. It evoked within me some sort of auditory uncanny valley, which sent waves of goosebumps across my flesh. I could feel a childlike panic overtake my mind. My eyes met John's. He gestured towards the trees. Maybe 50 yards out were the eyes we'd seen 2 days before. My own eyes widened and I shook my head no. I began with a small, almost imperceptible nod, then added vigor as John broke eye contact and stepped in the direction of the voice. John, I'm fucking begging you right now, do not go over there. John, please fucking please, we don't fucking know him. I couldn't find a good argument, but I prayed that the desperation which powered my whispers would convince my friend not to respond. Primally, evolutionarily, something in my body thrashed against contact with the voice coming from the woods. John turned to me again and nodded his head. He put his finger to his lips again, gentler this time, and motioned for me to wait. We sat in a sudden but welcome silence. My heart rate normalized, no longer slamming my chest but still pumping at twice its normal speed. John and I looked around, each of us seeming to cling to that old childhood feeling of if I simply stay quiet, the monster in my closet won't come out and get me. You guys. An inconceivable volume tore through the still woods. Without looking at each other, John and I burst into a sprint without a destination in mind. We ran for what felt like 20 minutes. Realistically, it was only 4 or 5, but my lungs writhed in pain beneath my heaving chest. The voice was gone. It had maybe been gone since we first took off. Steven. John didn't need to say anything else. He coughed, and I thought he might puke into the bushes. Hell, I thought I might. I know, I replied simply. I know. We made a solemn promise to each other that night that we'd make it to the next major departure from the trail and get the hell out. We both valued the completion of this promise over the breaking of our promise to hike to Maine. I was beyond relieved to see that he was taking those fucking eyes as seriously as I was. John broke both promises. He broke them both in one fell swoop. We chose to start our next day early, desperate to find salvation from the trail. In the early morning light, or the lack thereof, I spotted them first, just off the trail again, peering through the trademark fog that earned the Smokies their name. Truth be told, I hoped that John wouldn't notice. I thought that if we just forged ahead we could ignore them and be off the trail by mid-afternoon. We were almost out of their view when a voice interrupted the sounds of the forest. Tyler, I'm scared. Sammy's voice pleaded with the birds and the trees and the dirt. It pleaded with us. It wasn't Sammy's voice, of course, and I knew that. I think John knew it too, but goddamn him to hell he was a fool. Or maybe he didn't know. There's no way to tell at this point. Sammy, is that you? John's voice was a punch to my gut. I turned to watch as he crunched along the underbrush towards the sound. Tyler, please, I'm so afraid. Where did you go? The voice wavered with what sounded like real tears. Sammy, it's John. We met a few nights ago. Is everything alright? Did you guys get lost? John crossed the threshold into the unkempt woods. I stood motionless. My mouth opened and closed over and over. Even the leaves ceased to whisper as I watched my friend move ahead. The eyes were gone. Steven, get your ass over here. She needs help. Steven, come on. Follow me, I think I saw her. John peered around some honeysuckle as he ventured deeper into the woods. Finally, I felt my voice give life to my thoughts, albeit some of my stupider ones. I don't think we should go out there. The eyes. I whispered meekly. What? Bro, get over here. I can't even hear you, Jesus Christ. He pushed aside the dense undergrowth and disappeared from my sight. I whimpered. It escaped my lips involuntarily, and I shivered at the sound. I no longer heard Sammy. I no longer heard John. All the sound that remained in the forest was the thumping of my heart and the shifting of leaves overhead. I didn't dare move for fear of betraying my location. All that I could manage was to stare stupidly at the place where John had just been. A voice cut through the silence. Steven, get over here. Follow me. John's voice sounded like it was just on the other side of the thicket. He'd pushed past. Of course it wasn't John. His tone, the way that he ended his sentences, it sounded as if someone had simply recorded and played back John's voice. There was no urgency, no exclamation to mark his intensity. He pleaded, but his voice did not. I said nothing. I did nothing. Next came Sammy. Where did you go? The phrase came through identical to how it had only a minute or two ago. I knew that neither Sammy nor John waited for me in the woods, and still I wanted to join them. I wanted to push through the brush and see what hid there. Part of me wanted to die. I was so filled with visceral, inconsolable fear that I would have almost welcomed death just to rid myself of the situation. Maybe it wasn't death, even, maybe. I didn't join my dear friend, nor whatever it was that had taken him. I stood silently as tears ran down my face in steady streams. I don't know how long I stood there, as the passage of time was marked only by the sun and John, Sammy's descent into madness. Steven, follow. Jesus Christ. Christ Jesus, Steven. Then it was Sammy's turn. I'm afraid. I'm Tyler, afraid. Tyler where? Afraid. Tyler afraid. Sometimes they ended with guttural grunts and other excruciating noises. Their calls alternated but never overlapped. I stood and listened with dead ears until they finally stopped. Dusk had fallen and my entire body was numb. I let the silence wash over me like forgiveness while I waited. No part of me trusted that the sudden departure of the voices meant safety. Utter darkness had filled the sullen forest before I risked my first movement in hours. One step, just enough to count symbolically, and then I froze again. Only the crunch of leaves under my foot responded to me. Blissful, terrifying silence prevailed. I continued like this, taking only small steps, until I felt I couldn't stand it any longer. I stole myself, ground my teeth, and took off in a sprint. The unknown that surrounded me filled my mind with eldritch horrors. Things lurked in the trees, real or imagined, I'll never know. Yellow, sickly eyes peered out from the undergrowth to meet my blurred eyes. I cried as I ran, choking on harsh air that filled my chest with an excruciating chill. I didn't stop until a root caught my foot and sent me crashing into the ground. I must have laid there crying for hours, because when I finally collected myself enough to experience the world around me, light had crept back through the trees. I thanked God for this small miracle as I rolled onto my back and looked into the thick blanket of leaves above me. I could have tackled him, I thought. I could have tackled him the moment I saw him head for the voice. I knew his dumb ass would go and I knew how it would end. I did not afford myself any forgiveness at the time. I still don't. I picked myself up off the ground and walked, having no other choice. I knew only a few things for sure. John was most likely dead. I needed to leave the forest, and the way I came had at one point housed the yellow eyes. My goal was to make it to the nearest road and wave down a passing car. I didn't know when that would be or if anyone would pick up a solo hitchhiker in the woods of Appalachia, but I had to hope. As I came over top of a small hill on the path, I heard another voice. It was another one familiar to me. Heard first only a few days prior. The best part, the words slithered out of the woods, as real and tangible as a snake. They curled around my mind as I listened, strangling my thoughts and ceasing all else. I didn't bother to stop moving. In fact, I sped up. I kept my head down, but I could feel yellow eyes watching as I moved. The best part's ahead of you. Tyler's voice was insistent. It demanded I listen. Still I walked. The best part. Tyler's voice warbled and let loose a small growl. I was shaking, but I would not stop. The best part's ahead. Head best part. The best part as head. I almost threw up as the words echoed around me. The best part is the head, I thought. The best part is their head. Bile tore at my throat, burning as it bubbled its way towards my mouth. I forged ahead as I was taunted, never looking back nor speaking to the monster in the trees. Then came John. Bro, it's John, help. Sobs racked my body again as I began to jog. The voices kept a steady pace to my right, always just out of sight but never out of earshot. Just as I ran out of my adrenaline-fueled energy, I broke out of the trees onto a road. Across the empty highway was the re-entrance to the Appalachian Trail, as inviting as it was foreboding. The voices had become such a constant harassment that I hardly noticed their departure. They had begun to fill in the soundscape the same way birds or crickets might. As I stood on the hot asphalt of an unknown road, I realized that I no longer heard anyone. Emboldened by what felt like safety, I risked a glance back at the trees behind me. Shivers ran the length of my body as my eyes met it. Sick and yellow they stared, somehow emanating hatred and indifference all at once. I want to lie and say that I held its gaze, but I did not. I felt a deep understanding of death and I looked away, back at the road before me. I did not dare look again, nor did I venture off of the road. Instead, I straddled the yellow line and walked. I walked until my legs gave out. My knees buckled and the weight of my backpack pushed me to the ground. It wasn't long before a car pulled up beside me. It was a Toyota Corolla. The paint job had been red once, but years of use had dulled and rusted it to a hapless brown. I'd never seen a car so beautiful in my entire life. The man who invited me and had questions, lots of them, but seemed to pick up on my shell-shocked nature. I'm guessing he just thought I was another failure to complete, someone who couldn't finish the trail and had to tap out. I chose to let him believe so. When he asked where to take me, I said only 2 words: police station. It took us maybe 20 minutes to get there, and in that time, I gave up on justice. I knew what would happen if I told the truth. I would argue, they would tell me I imagined things. Maybe they'd even suspect things of me. I didn't want to go to an asylum and I didn't want to be a mockery. What I wanted most was to get John back, but I knew that he was gone. The police had all sorts of questions. How John and I got separated, if I knew exactly where he'd fallen off the path, if I knew for sure he was dead, and many more. I told them that he left the trail because he thought he heard someone in trouble and that he fell down a steep drop he hadn't seen. I said that I went to check on him and that I knew he was dead. I found that this balance of truths and untruths gave me some measure of comfort, an oasis of honesty within my desert of lies. The most important thing now was to discourage anyone from going to find him, and to make certain that I did not provide his family any false hope. Eventually the police let me go, and they even offered to provide me transport back to where we started in Tennessee. An officer drove down with me so that he could be the one to tell John's family. I asked that I join him. The hours I spent with them were the most painful I've ever experienced, filled with agony and lies. Much to my chagrin, his sobbing mother, a woman who'd been around for almost all of my life, begged the officer to send a team to recover John's body. I wanted to argue, to try to prevent anyone from ever being victim to those eyes again, but what could I say? It's been a few weeks now. I'm not sure what happened to that task force, but I can guarantee they never found John's body. I only hope that everyone made it back okay. I don't have the heart to look into it. In the time since, people from my town have started to go missing. A serial killer, they've labeled it. The Collins Street killer. It's in all the papers. First the nice old lady from down the road, then the kid catty corner from my place. Yesterday my neighbor joined the growing list. It was my fault. Tom, the guy next door, called me yesterday late into the evening. Hey Steven, how you holding up, man? Just going day by day, I guess. I tried not to let my defeat be heard. You staying safe? You know, with all the disappearances. Tom was beating around the bush. Yeah, Tom, I'm safe. How about you? I looked into my bathroom mirror, trying not to linger on the bags beneath my eyes. I'm good, yeah. I'm good, thanks. Hey, I really don't want to upset you. I know you've got a ton on your mind already, but do you hear something out back? He waited for my response. My stomach hurt so badly I couldn't speak for a moment. Hear what, Tom? I know how it sounds. I swear to God I know how it sounds, but I keep hearing John. There was a long pause. Out behind our houses, somewhere in the trees. I swear he's saying your name, Steven. I grit my teeth against the pain in my gut. Tom, I need you to hear what I am about to say. It is very important that you listen to me. Tom chuckled, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. I don't. Well, Tom, seriously, I interrupted. Do not, for any reason, step into the woods. John is not out there, he's dead. Do you hear me? John is dead, and whatever you think you're hearing, you are not hearing that. I didn't mean to be cruel, but I couldn't stand the thought of another person losing their life. I knew what waited in the tree line behind our houses, and I knew that to engage with those fucking yellow eyes was a death sentence. Yeah, no, you're right. I know that. I just thought you might want to know, just in case. There is no just in case, Tom. God damn it, there is no just in case. John is dead, just stay your ass inside. I hung up the phone. I felt horrible immediately, but I didn't know any other way to get the message through. Hands shaking, I walked to the fridge and grabbed a bottle of Tito's. I took a shot and chased it with lemonade. I took another shot. Then another. It wasn't long before the bottle was empty. When I woke up this morning, hungover and sweaty, the police were next door. Tom was gone. I'm writing this because, as I sit on my back porch and look out to the woods, Tom is calling out, "Need help?" He asks. The question was surely to John, asked into the void late last evening. "I'm on my way," says Tom. God bless his naive soul. Should you find this post and think that I'm insane, torn up over the loss of my best friend, maybe driven mad by having left him for dead in the Appalachian mountains, it doesn't matter, just promise that you'll never interact with the yellow eyes. You can promise it to me, you can swear it to God, I don't care. Do not speak with the yellow eyes in the woods. I'm going out there, here in the next few minutes. I hope it's swift, painless. I hope that my voice doesn't haunt the woods of my town, and I hope that it never lures an unsuspecting victim to their death. I don't know why, but I believe that if I give myself over, this'll all stop. The eyes have followed me all the way home, still seeking me out. I pray that if I walk into the woods, voice silent but for one response, that the eyes will return to somewhere in the wilderness. I'll say to whomever reads this, and to John, Tyler, Sammy, Tom, to everyone, I'll say to everyone what I will say as I enter the woods. I'm sorry. Thank you to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacey, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to making more content for everyone.